Hi, everyone. My name is Peppe Ragusa, and I'm a senior product manager at Adobe. In my career as a product manager, I've mostly built business products. At OpenTable, I launched the first version of a web-based reservation dashboard for restaurant managers. Then at Hotel Tonight, I led several growth initiatives that helped hotel managers acquire guests and increase bookings. And now at Adobe, my job is to make it as easy as possible for our business customers to manage Adobe licenses within their organizations. Now, today, I wanted to share some thoughts about how storytelling is a key soft skill that every product manager should develop in order to be successful. The three takeaways from this presentation should be: number one, people remember stories, not data. Number two, emotions are key to success. And number three, stories are not just for customers. Now, as humans, we've been telling stories since the beginning of time. Something is changing, though. In the last few decades, our civilization has become more and more exposed to statistics. But only very few people have brains that are built to retain all that information. Everyone can remember a good story much better than we can remember numbers. So how does this translate to what we do as product managers? Especially when we think of successful product managers as data-driven. Being data-driven and being a good storyteller are not mutually exclusive. Depending on who you're addressing and at what phase of the product lifecycle, you need to take a step back and tailor your presentation to your audience. Generally speaking, even if your presentation needs to have hard data, you should try to leave that for the end or as close to the end as possible. For example, don't start your presentation with, "I looked at last week's analytics and I saw a bounce rate of 57.1%, a page load of 7 seconds." Most of your audience will not remember those numbers. If anything, they'll remember the high-level idea that there is a page load problem or a bounce rate problem. Our brains are wired to ignore information that requires too much effort to process. So instead, tell them a story. It may seem a little random, but maybe because of its randomness, the audience will be captivated and will actually start paying attention. So start your presentation with a colorful story full of details that will eventually lead to the main point that you're trying to make. And this is valid for any product. It can be an app, a website, a hardware product. So let's make an example. For example, if you're building an app that makes it easier to get a driver's license, don't start by saying how many people apply for a license every year, the average duration of the process, the demographics, 95th percentiles, and so on. Try to leave that for the end. The best way to start is by telling your own story, how you got up on the day of your 16th birthday and how excited you were about finally gaining your independence, how you felt while you were walking to the DMV, how you were shocked by the amount of people in line, and then build on that story until you say, well, it turns out I'm not the only 16-year-old who experienced that, and here are the numbers. I did get my license eventually, but it didn't have to be that painful. So as product managers, part of our job is to persuade our leadership, our customers, our stakeholders. And as I said earlier, facts and data alone are not always enough to even get their attention. So a good story helps with drawing their attention, but emotions are what persuades. So a few tips here. First, make sure that you choose a setting that everyone is familiar with. So your audience can clearly visualize the space in their mind. For example, if you're building a product for teachers, set the story in a classroom. And second, make sure that you highlight the feelings rather than just outlining a sequence of events. Throughout the story, your main character probably goes through some feelings of anticipation, impatience, frustration, hope, relief, excitement, hopefully even delight. So don't hesitate using those terms or whatever terms are relevant to your story. Then you want the story to stick. The audience needs to remember the story, but also needs to remember the feelings that they had while they were listening to you. They should still think about what you told them long after you told them. And the more emphasis you put on the feelings, the more the story will stick and your audience will identify itself with the story, which means that the higher the chances that they will give you what they need, what you need from them, whether that's funding or some type of approval or their help in making your product successful. So at this point, you may ask, this is great, especially when I'm launching a new product or maybe in a customer conference setting, but how can I start applying some of these concepts in my daily job? And the reality is that a large majority of product managers don't do much public speaking. But stories are actually a great tool for internal presentations as well. Most of the stories that I've told in my career have been to internal stakeholders. And I found that a perfect storytelling opportunity is a kickoff meeting for a new initiative. You may find yourself in a conference room or a video call these days with a handful of colleagues from engineering, design, maybe product marketing. And the best way to motivate them and get them excited is to start by telling them a story related to what you're about to build. After that meeting, you can refer to that story throughout the development process. And if the story was well crafted, everyone will remember it vividly. And they will bring it up to you anytime that they have questions, even several weeks or months after that kickoff meeting. For example, last year, I pitched a new product idea to my extended team here at Adobe. And the main character of my story was a teacher that I named Alice. And to make the story memorable, I made up a situation where Alice was buying bagels. And I mean, I made my user a human being by just giving her a name and a face, and by telling a story that everyone can relate to, like buying a bagel. And to this date, my colleagues still ask me about Alice and the bagels. Everyone remembers the product that I wanted to build for Alice, even people who eventually were not involved with building that product. So in conclusion, stories can be told in many ways. And if you Google storytelling techniques, you'll find a lot of material. I found that there is no single template for crafting a good story. Many experts recommend breaking it down into 3 or 4 parts and following the structure of a book or a movie. So there will be an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. But one of the layouts that I've found very effective is where the end of the story ties back to the beginning of the story. Also, I find it effective to use immersive full screen photos in your slides while you're telling the story rather than writing words. So whatever structure you use, the key is to keep the what for the end. First, your audience needs to get excited about the story, and then after a good emotional build-up, you can finally reveal how your product enables the happy ending. Being able to influence decision makers and persuade customers and stakeholders is foundational to our success as product managers. I hope that the tips that I shared with you today will help you, but please reach out on LinkedIn if you have any comments or feedback. Thank you.